All right, June 22nd, and a new episode of GTMN, a little bit of a different format today. So
Got an
we're
interview.
going to have an interview. Yes, we're going to have a guest joining us in a few minutes. We will reveal the guest when they join, so we're not going to do a whole bunch of preamble. But Austin, I'm curious, what's up in your world? What is what are you reading? What are you seeing in the world of go-to-market right now? What's top of mind?
Love that I can hear the fire. And you got to be in San Francisco, New York. One of the two.
SF, yep.
What's new, man? What's new? Oh my gosh. I feel like, I'm progressing on using AI in marketing. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. I'm very interested in this concept of like an AI CMO, or what's the Harvey of marketing. And I think the problem is that marketing is just a loose collection of very different fields. Brand marketing is very different from product marketing, is very different from growth marketing, is different from attribution. And, there are lots of different surface areas. There's your website, there's ads, there's the ad channels, which have different network connections, and brand and design lives in Figma and Drive. So there's a lot of complexity that doesn't exist, say, in like the legal space where you have all your docs in Drive and it's ultimately just words. That's like what legal is. So I'm interested in this problem space. And so I've been talking to a lot of founders. I've been trying to think about what are the primitives for marketing that are easy to solve with AI and what's hard. Because I think there's tons of tools out there right now that are chipping away at parts of the problem, but none of them are really connected. And I don't even know if they can be. So the question is what would be valuable for marketing teams to have a scaffold or a framework that can just deploy onto any company and hey, here's a bunch of tools you can just deploy to do jobs. Or do people really want an all-in-one solution? Because, for example, we've talked about some of the SEO companies, the AI SEO companies, Profound and AirOps, and they're solving a problem and then kind of working backwards into website tech. But your website is only one piece of your marketing growth engine. So yeah, and I mean, you're thinking about this too at Paramark, right? You have attribution. Can you work backwards into solving, the things that actually drive growth? So just spending a lot more time thinking about these problems and talking to founders about it.
And on that note, we have one of those founders, Jacob. Thank you for joining. Guys? This will be fun. I don't know if you remember, Jacob, we hung out on a Zoom call months ago. I think this is before your HQ days. Yeah. We were talking to Olivia about all the stuff that's happening in AI and marketing, and I thought the two of you should have known each other. But welcome. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Are we hopping straight in?
We're hopping straight in. So we started recording a few minutes ago. We did a little preamble, and this is our first of many interview shows where we are talking to operators, founders in and around go-to-market. And you were on the list. So
I'm happy
excited
to be here.
chat.
Thank you. I'm excited.
All right, I got to start with your accent. Are you from Australia, Jacob?
I am. Yeah.
All right.
I actually
when
wasn't
did you
born
move
there.
here?
I grew up. I have a bit of South African too. That's why the accent is weird.
Fantastic. Okay. Yeah. How long have you been in the US? Tell us about your journey to marketing and AI and what's happening, because I think you have a pretty interesting background. So I want to start there.
Yeah. Well, I moved to the US. It was a long journey. I came for the first time on an exchange program when I was 18, and I just wanted to experience the US. This was before anything interesting was happening in my life. I just wanted to experience the US college experience. And so I did an exchange and I really loved it. I met my girlfriend, who is now my fiance, and her and I didn't want to break up. I still wanted to be able to come back to the US. And so after a 2-year separation during COVID, Australia, the country was completely shut down. I moved here in 2021 to do my master's, and I've been here ever since then. Did my master's and then worked, and then I ended up working originally as a software engineer while I was studying in my master's as at a e-commerce fulfillment and logistics startup called Airhouse. And that's where I got into the whole e-commerce world. This was pre-marketing days, but as soon as ChatGPT was released, quit my job straight away, and I was I'm building AI software. This was super early days. Very quickly, I started building AI supply chain and logistics software, and very quickly realized all of my customers only cared about marketing And so that like led me to the world of marketing. I met Taylor Holiday, who was CEO of Common Thread Collective, and he was like a very big and important support in my career. He brought me into CTC as the director of AI, spent a lot of time building for them. He gave me a platform and really helped me out and taught me a lot about the business and about marketing. And through working with lots of clients there, I kind of started to differentiate myself in the AI marketing world, and then was like, okay, I still need to build something. So left again. And then that's around the time that you and I met. Didn't land on anything super exciting to build. And I didn't want to like rush into a problem that wasn't worth working on. And I think I knew the dirty little secret early on that everyone kind of came to realize a couple years later, that AI wasn't at the place where you could build really great products yet. And no one really wanted to admit that. So I didn't want to fully invest in anything. So spent a little bit of time consulting. I did some time with Google Labs building their AI marketing product. And then now I'm here building HQ. That's the full story.
That's great. Okay, I'm super excited to talk to you about HQ, but I want to dig into, wait, did you really work with Google Labs? And what was that experience? And what was the product that you were building with them?
Yeah, one day I got a DM on X from an account. I don't even know if it was a verified account with like 150 followers saying like, hey, I'm head of growth at Google Labs. Do you want to talk to us? And I was
That's
like,
hilarious.
Yeah, of course. And it turns out it was obviously Google has an incredible team. And I met with them and they asked me if I would like to join. They were creating a new role inside of each Labs team. So Labs, they have little teams working on individual products that if they see success, they then get rolled out as broader Google like AI products. So like Notebook LM was an example of one of these. VO3, I forgot what the video editor product was called, but they came out of Labs as well.
Vids.
Yeah, that was some of the successes. So I joined, they were working on an ad or creative asset generator product. And that was where I had kind of differentiated myself socially, I would say, is in the ads world, the ad generation world, because I was working on this problem very early. And yeah, they asked me if I would come in as as a consultant, basically, someone who would be able to work with their team, like an incredible team. They had like product managers and then these insane DeepMind engineers like working on this ad product. We were fine tuning our own models and we were working through evals on the Gemini models versus the custom models and different architectures for constructing the ads. It was a pretty cool problem. And the product is called Pomeli, Google Labs Pomeli. That's still doing well and the team is still working on it. And it was an amazing experience being able to work with Google in the Mountain View office. They flew me out to the New York office, even the San Francisco office. Being there was like during the AI hype like peak, I think is going to be one of the coolest experiences of my life. So I was very happy I got to do that.
And Pomeli's kind of cool. I was at a dinner like maybe about 2 months ago, and the CMO at this wine company, an online wine company, mentioned to me that he was running all of their statics through Pomeli, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they're easily spending like $10-20 million a year. So that was like pretty impressive. Okay, and then you and Austin know each other. So this is a small world. I was emailing you, I was like, hey, do you want to come on the pod? And Austin and I host the thing. And you're like, oh yeah, I just met Austin. So that's, wild. Let's talk about HQ. And I know you guys have spent a lot of time talking about HQ. So what is it? Let's start there. And is it for marketers? Is it for everybody? Like, I think it's broader, but like, tell us what HQ is. How should everyone use it?
Yeah. So the biggest problem that I experienced when I was working with teams trying to help them figure out AI and roll out and implement AI was that they just didn't have a way of collaborating and sharing when they used AI. So I use my Claude, you use your Claude code, I use Codex, Austin uses Codex or ChatGPT, right? But when we work, there's consistent layers of context that we're working on top of in order to collaborate. So like there's specific knowledge that we work on top of, there's skills and workflows that we execute, there's projects that we're working on, there's different layers of context like meeting notes and Slack messages and everything that we need in order to effectively work together as a team using AI. So HQ was built as a layer of context that basically sits below everyone's personal AI tool, everyone's AI tool that it can naturally integrate with. And so everyone is working on top of, but also contributing to the same layer of context. And we built a lot of functionality around that, like almost an ecosystem of products are growing around that in order to improve the collaboration experience with AI. So turns out that most of the way of communicating with AI ends up happening in different HTML artifacts or web apps. So we wanted to make it really easy for anyone to just deploy an app without needing a Vercel integration. And it's really important that if I integrate with a specific piece of software and share a skill with you, you also need to be able to integrate with that piece of software. So we built a secrets manager, and we're building an MCP consolidation tool as well. So multiple different features around this shared context layer, which at its core is a file system to improve the collaboration experience with AI.
This is very close to the conversations that Austin and I have been having about collaboration on top of AI. So I'm curious, Austin, like what's your take? Like, does this scratch the itch that you've had about this collaboration issue? Because I know you work with a lot of different teams, and you often we always talked about this being like a choke point in your like the ability of for you to kind of create adoption within teams.
Yeah. And it's funny, going back to the start of the conversation, Jacob and I met because I was searching for a tool that might have solved this problem. And maybe 3 months ago on the podcast, we talked about a DoorDash product manager had talked on LinkedIn. I'm forgetting her name, so pardon me if I don't give her due credit, but there was a DoorDash product manager that built kind of like a hub or OS system for her growth team, and it was on GitHub. And then I guess she gave a skill to a bunch of people to use GitHub. But so I started trying to implement that with a bunch of portfolio companies and founders and entrepreneurs, and I found it like really didn't work because one, not everybody even knows what GitHub is. And then two, engineers and IT managers don't want to give everybody access to GitHub. So GitHub actually like doesn't work as a system of record outside of technical teams. You could build like some framework around it, like you can build an application on top and you can use GitHub Actions and all that stuff, but it doesn't really solve the core problem. So I almost think that like what she invented and what's cool is that maybe GitHub is the ultimate source of truth from an engineering perspective, like you root this thing in GitHub, but whatever your accountant and HR manager and marketer and everybody else who's non-technical is using, that they're never going to touch GitHub, and they are not supposed to. And so when I kind of made that connection through my own learnings, I started looking for tools. And then obviously, Jacob, I saw your tweet on X and followed up. And I still have your invite sitting in my inbox from our last conversation where I need to try HQ. So pardon me. It's fascinating though. Like around the same time that I was talking to you, I found this video from YC, from Gary Tan and some of the other folks around like just pre and post conversation hooks and the object of Skillify and building like a skill library. And so I think I could be wrong. Maybe you can push me a bit here. Like I think in my mind, I actually need to solve for the engineering problem first, which is how do all the technical people on the team house a library of skills? And like, how's that in some type of GitHub repo or library, or come up with a system of record for us, all the engineers. And then once we're satisfied with the complexities, worry about the rest, worry about the non-technical folks. Mostly because I think if I work with maybe 2 or 3 engineers closely day to day, and we don't have a system of record right now. So we don't have skills we can use, and we don't have an MCP. My hope and intention is that if we solve the way that we collaborate first, then when we try a tool like HQ, it means I can actually like build stuff really, really quickly using engineering tools and hopefully just like put those skills in HQ, which I know you're probably going to say, well, you could do that anyways today. But I think a lot of the organizations I talk to already have this engineering infrastructure built. So it makes a lot of sense to just solve for the non-technical. In my current role where I'm working with some folks, we don't even have that beginning yet.
So I want to pull on this thread a little bit, Jacob and Austin. So internally, what we have done, Jacob, is our go-to-market engineer has created a BigQuery, database.
Shree's brother too, right? This is Mr. Bachu.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's exactly right. So he's created a database of all of our call recordings, our blog posts, our podcasts, like at least on the go-to-market side, like all the context flows into a database, and then we kind of go, back and forth on top of that database and like how we want to sort of use it in different types of AI workflows. And I'm imagining, Jacob, what you're going to tell me is that's not good enough because that means you need to have an engineer who has to set up a database, and the vast majority of organizations are not going to have that luxury. But there's probably other things that are going beyond that database that are better served in other form factors. Tell me if I'm right or wrong, or what am I missing there, Jacob?
Yeah, I would say, kind of related to what both of you have said, there are tools that exist out there where you can store different pieces of context and you can develop ways to pass those into different members of your team. And you can do that for technical people, you can do that for non-technical people. Sometimes you may have a data engineer who can set up BigQuery, sometimes you don't. But the fundamental learning that I've seen by doing this and trying to roll this out in hundreds of businesses now is that if you don't make this as dead easy as possible for someone to use, if you don't make it as like seamless and efficient and unobtrusive as possible, then the system doesn't get adopted. And so it falls apart. And with a context layer, you have to be updating context. Otherwise it becomes out of date and it becomes even more annoying. And it's this compounding cycle of it just doesn't get used. And so for a non-technical org, telling them to push to GitHub or review a pull request, or having someone else as a bottleneck to review the pull request to get their skills into the skill library, those like little pieces of friction, as they compound, especially in a non-technical org, they fall apart. Also, the engineering to non-engineering system is also another thing which is really worth considering and thinking about, because the nature of work of an engineer and the nature of their brain and how they think is fundamentally different to some of the non-technical functions inside of a business. And so an engineered solution with GitHub, they've been using Git and GitHub for the past 15 years. They fundamentally understand exactly how it works, and they have strong mental models for how to interact with that. Even with like a BigQuery data warehouse, like I understand how you insert a new record into a table. Try convince a marketer how to do that. It doesn't click for a lot of people. So you have to design a system which works well for them and is not engineered on top of, and is not aligned with how engineering teams work. So that's a big learning, and that's a constant struggle that we have inside of our business, because we are an engineering team. Like we basically don't have any non-engineering roles in our team, building the solution for 90% of non-technical user base. And every day I push back on like, this is a solution for engineers, but we need to think about how to do this for the least technical person in our team. And it's a constant debate and a constant struggle that we have all the time. And I think a combination of the two works well. You have to have something sitting in between.
Well, and one thing we talked about, Jacob, in our call, which I think is interesting about what you're building is, and I might be like grossly misrepresenting this, so tell me if I'm wrong, but like at the end of the day, I almost think of this as like Dropbox 2.0, right? Dropbox 1.0 was just files. Dropbox 2.0 is files and context. And the context is actually is files for what it's worth, but
it is.
we're not, it is files. Like it's all markdown files.
Files are sexy again.
Yeah. Skills and agents and crons, like all these things are actually just like, their derivative format is just markdown or text files.
Yep.
But I think like something that has become blazingly clear to me is that there's a component of what you're building that requires what I think of as like a context pipeline or a transcription pipeline, which you have built, Pranav. It's like, hey, I need all of my go-to-market calls, and I want to have, the stuff that I'm getting from Substack, and I want to have my LinkedIn. There are these other artifacts that at their core are one-on-one artifacts, but you actually want to roll up into like a team artifact library. And I think lots of companies are building these things, and actually they're worth building. Like for even if that's buying a third-party service. For example, like Pranav, like you use Clarify and you use HubSpot, and you also tried Salesforce at some point, and you had Grain. So like you have context spread amongst many, many different tools. And I'm confident that context may change in the years to come. If Paramark is successful, you might change CRMs, you might change call recording software. And so I'm a big believer that like you should collect all that infrastructure data somewhere, and it should be very accessible in some type of team-based MCP, which is hard because I think like the selling point of Claude and Codex right now is that you can connect to an MCP, but you can only access your stuff. So if I want to look across all the conversations on go-to-market and draw synthesis or results, you can't easily do that. An example in like the VC community is you have these operating partners where they're all talking to different portfolio companies. And if you want to group up insights by portfolio company, you can't do that unless you have a collection or some type of service. And I kid you not, like I've talked to 20 different founders this last month, and every single one of them is like, yeah, we need to store all of our context in some type of data lake. So whether it's a procured solution like, hey, connect Grain, connect Fireflies, connect Salesforce, connect Clarify, connect, Revo, whatever, and it just pulls all the transcription to a service, or you roll your own, which you can do. It just requires, again, an engineer to set that up once. You do have to like go build against the API, and you have to worry about things like, well, we don't want to have the founders one-on-one conversations in here. So there is some like work required to do it. But I think these content lakes are actually really, really important for the next step of moving from, hey, I just built something cool and a skill that I want to share, to now actually we can like take this thing that works on one person's machine and we can kind of turn it into a full grade productized system. And this has long been like a recurring theme that we talk about all the time, Pranav, is like marketers in particular doing things on their account, on their local machine with their MCPs. Well, the only real way today to get that out of their machine is to like assign an engineer or a go-to-market engineer to work with them. So I'm kind of thinking, Jacob, like how do you expect we'll go from single player mode to somewhat multiplayer mode to single or multiplayer mode that's housed in the cloud with like production grade workflows that would allow somebody to leave an organization and not have a bunch of stuff break?
Yeah. Well, let me like set the different layers of context. So what you described is HQ, which is amazing, but let me describe the different layers of context that an organization cares about, and the way that multiplayer mode works. Because I like to think of our team, we use HQ to the fullest extent of its capabilities, and we have a really strong AI team. I think we are operating a year into the future of 2 years into the future of how teams should operate. And so the way that we work, I think, is probably a really good insight into how teams should work in the future with AI. So different layers of context, right? There's your static context. That's like who we are, what we do, brand guidelines, how we talk about ourselves, stuff like that. Very simple. That's really easy to set up. I can put that in a Google Drive. There's like no really additional value in me giving you a tool like HQ to use that. Then there is the static the hot context, the like active context. Those are your note taker, that's your messages, that's your emails, that's your CRM updates, right? That needs to have a pipeline flowing into this context layer. And it's also inherently related to the other pieces of context you have already in there. And then what you can do on top of that is you can extract new context off of that. So what we do is we generate an ontology related to your business around all these different pieces of context. And then I can say, I was in a meeting with Austin. Austin is my VC. And in the meeting, he said, that's his relationship to me. And in the meeting, he said, these are your action items. These are the things you need to do. That's related to this project that I'm gearing up for my launch, right? Like I've inferred all of this additional context, and that needs to be developed off of this like hot context that's constantly flowing into this repository. And then the other piece, which I think people miss when they develop these systems, is the work, like the work that is actually being done. Assuming all of my work is being done with AI now, which it is, every single piece of work either goes through Codex or Claude Code or some other agent tool that I have, that work needs to be represented and captured somewhere. The intention of that work needs to be captured, not just the final artifact of it. That's why everyone's saying PRs aren't good enough right now, and the context and code reviews aren't great, because you need to capture the intention, the reason, all the org-related context to why that thing happened. And that then needs to be shareable and collaborate. You need to be able to collaborate that with other people inside of your organization. And those three layers, stacking those three layers together, I think is where you really start to feel like the system is different. So the way that I'll just tell you how we work. What we do is I'm working inside of HQ on my Claude Code, on my Codex. It's just the context that is ingested into these different systems. Let's just say I want to work on a new feature. I like have a meeting with a client. They're like, okay, I want you to work on, this is great, but I really need you to do this, right? That gets pulled into my HQ. I just like go into Codex and I'm like, hey, I just had this meeting with Pranav and now I need to do that thing that he said I need to do, right? That inside of HQ creates a new project. I say, okay, I want to brainstorm. I want to think about all the different like, how am I going to do this? It creates a brainstorm document. All right, let me plan. It creates a planning document. It actually uses different hooks inside of the different harnesses to capture session notes. This is the question that I asked, and this is how we answered, right? All of this context being built up around that conversation, saved in this project. And then I'm like, you know what? I actually don't have time to work on this. I'm talking to 17 other clients today. Let me hand this off to my engineer, Hassan, who is an unbelievable engineer. I just share it with him using the HQ share skill. I even deploy a little related web app to diagram and explain what I did that's associated with this handoff that I give him. And I'm like, Hassan, can you please take this over the finish line? Hassan doesn't really need to do anything. It just shows up inside of his HQ because he has access to it. It exists on his machine or via the MCP. And he sees all of that context that I discussed. He knows what happened, who the client is. He knows what was said in the call. He has all the clarifications that I made based on my insight. And he's like, all right, cool, finished, done. He finishes the project. We actually have built a messaging and DM feature. He DMs me. He says, cool, this is done. You can close the loop with the client, and then I can close the loop and tell them it's ready. That email closing the loop is all stored inside of HQ. Now, all of this context, everything that mattered within within our company on pushing out this feature is now in one consolidated place. And even better than that, I didn't have to do it. Hassan collaborated with me. I did it. I could even share it with my marketing person. I'm like, hey, this is actually a really cool feature. Can you please build like an asset on this so we can post it on X? It's all in one place. It's all inside of our HQ. And that experience is really nice. Now, the next level to that, there is one more level, which is agents, which I can talk about afterwards. When you can deploy an agent on top of the HQ context, and the agent also has all of this context as well, and I can message Hassan's agent in Slack instead of Hassan, and he doesn't even have to worry about it. And I can even run workflows on his machine because I can run inside of his version of HQ, and he can be brought in when he needs to be brought in, but for the most part, I'm just talking to Hassan's agent instead of him. That's the next level. That's when you start to feel like you got a little bit of AGI inside of your organization. I know I just rushed into that one.
That was great. So I've very tactical questions for people who are listening in, who are curious and want to give this a shot. I'm assuming a big value prop here is that whether you're using Claude or Codex or, in future, I'm assuming, what is the Google one called? Studio? Whatever it is.
Galaxy or something.
I forget. So one of the things is like HQ works across all of your individual and team level sort of tools.
Correct.
Do you have a Mac app? Do you work in a web app? Like how do people interact with HQ? What's the modality?
There's two different interaction points. One for the more advanced users is we have a Mac app. It syncs the HQ file system into your local file system. And then when you work inside of Claude Code or Codex or Cursor, that becomes your Active Directory. The reason why we do that and it's ideal is because we have something, I don't know if this term exists, but we're calling it a meta harness, which I can explain afterwards. But we have a meta harness within HQ, which makes it work a little bit nicer. And then for your least technical people who you don't want to put in Claude Code, you use the HQ MCP, which you can just connect to ChatGPT or Claude or one of the chat applications, and they can interact with it that way.
Interesting. Okay, so even from within a user's Claude, you can MCP into HQ and get all that shared context. And so you're kind of working both ways. You are integrating back into sort of an existing workflow, and you're giving people an option of working in a completely new workflow, which is inside of HQ.
When I say inside of HQ, I am in Claude Code or I am in Codex, but my Active Directory is set to HQ. Like the folder that I'm working inside of is a folder on my computer called HQ. And there's also a CLI to interact with the various cloud functions. But yeah, I'm not leaving the application that I am already familiar with. I'm just working outside of a new folder, and the folder represents my context.
And that's what I find so interesting and cool, and why I think of the Dropbox analogy. Because right now, like all this stuff is happening on your local machine if you use Codex or Claude Cowork. And it's like, even if you know all the primitives, it's hard to know what Claude is doing in the background a lot of the time. There's the rooted.claude file. And then if you have subfolders, you can have, kind of like directory level or children directories with memories and skills. And I remember one of the first things I built back in January was a Claude Hub, which was a directory to manage all the other directories that it synthesizes skills. And that, like, when you start getting to that level of involvement, you already know that you've lost 99% of people. Like that has to happen automatically. You have to just install an app and then it manages sessions and skills and memory files and everything for you. And so in a lot of ways, I feel like right now, what you're building and what I think many people are going to start building is almost like these primitives of how software is now built or how AI is now built. In the same way of like, when people first started developing applications and they had to figure out how to install them on a machine, going from hardware to software is exactly what we're experiencing right now with AI. It's just folks like you and I and Pranav, even you as a startup leader, are like, we're learning how the primitives work. And then I think slowly but surely over time, a lot of these things will just become formalized into a structure that everybody agrees on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I'm going through your website right now, Jacob. First thing, go to, if you're listening, hq4work.com. That's where everything lives. And I'm going through it and I see in your setup steps, you've got start work, or actually before that, you've got open the sync app. And that was exactly where like the Dropbox analogy works. I worked at Dropbox a decade ago. So I'm like, all right, this makes a ton of sense. All right, very cool. Jacob, I'm assuming you're open for business. Like you are, you must be getting a ton of interest. So can people just sign up and start using it? Do they have to go through somebody on your team to kind of get started? What does that look like?
So it's a bit interesting. We are currently gated behind request a demo if you go through the website right now. But if you do select just one person, then it will allow you to install the app. We also do have the install link available out there. So we're currently gearing up for public launch. So most people end up talking to me. A lot of people have just been installing it themselves. We also have an open source npx command, npx create HQ. And people are coming in through there as well. So we're gearing up for a public launch, generally available, so people will be able to just sign up and use it. But for now, you can also talk to me if you want a demo and you want a walkthrough, and I can also personally onboard you. But we're open for business. We're working with some really, really great businesses currently running their full operation on top of HQ, which is amazing for us. And yeah, it's been a great experience.
Awesome. I know we only had you for half an hour. We've already extended our time here, so we're going to let you go. Austin, any last questions before we wrap?
No last questions. I'm really excited what you guys are building. And I will respond to your invite now.
Well, thank you.
There was some value for Jacob to come on this episode. Is get Austin.
It was always on my to-do list. This definitely reminded me. But I mean, one of the things that I'm really excited about, and people should be excited about, is that in theory, if it's just a directory system, if you're working out of folders, you just drag and drop your folders to HQ and it should start working. So I think like if anybody out there is wondering how this all works, if you're using folders and you know how to click and drag, you can probably try to use the product.
Guess what? We even have a pre-built skill in HQ that does that for you. So it's meant to be as easy as possible.
A skill to move folders. Wow, where are we?
Amazing. Jacob, thank you so much for doing this. Very excited for what you're building. And yeah, hopefully the launch will go fantastically and we'll maybe talk in 6 months and see where you're up to.
Thank you guys.
All right. Well, that was exciting. Austin, yeah, no, it's interesting. Like I was thinking about deploying HQ. Now like I heard the whole pitch and I'm like, yeah, we should probably give it a shot ourselves, because the way we share skills is basically just all through Claude right now. And one of the interesting things that was going through my head is like, I'm pretty sure Codex, like there's a lot of chatter about how Codex is like so much better than Claude at this point. I don't know if that's true or not. It's just, the pendulum swings from one to the other.
The waves, man.
Yeah,
3 months ago, it was the opposite. It was like, God, Codex sucks. Like,
And so one of the interesting things about the way Jacob talked about HQ is it doesn't matter where you are. All the context is shared. And I think that's a really strong value prop for them, because this is not the end of it. Like maybe there'll be other open source, LLMs and other tools that are specific for certain industries, right? So it makes a lot of sense to have something that goes beyond just Claude or Codex and sort of has that shared context across not just people, but across multiple AI tools.
What I'm still waiting for, and maybe HQ will do this, is when you use the Claude app and then you compare that to the experience of using Claude Code, I feel so much more powerful using Claude Code. I get so much of a more robust response and a faster response. And I don't actually know the answer to this. I'm sure there's a logical one. But for whatever reason, I feel like I'm playing on junior varsity when I use the Claude app. So like if I'm building stuff, I never build it in the Claude app because it's just like it takes forever and it like always tries to use MCPs. It's not really intelligent. Where Claude Code, I think, is much more endeavoring and it like actually feels a lot more like a worker. Same with using the Codex, API in a terminal session. Like I don't differentiate between Claude Code and Codex, and just like the experience of using terminal is more like, oh, it's just a really fast chat. And so one thing that I'm curious about with HQ and these others is if like they can take the code experience and just simplify it a bit and have the same pace of like, here's what I'm doing, and I'm running in the background, I'm going fast, and like here are the things I know. I almost feel like the problem with Claude Cowork and even Codex right now is that it's so dumbed down that I feel like in order to make progress on anything, it takes a lot of effort. And I wish there was just like a faster experience for non-technical people that wasn't quite so, technical in nature. And that's the reason why I'm investing in our own infrastructure. Like I'm going to try out HQ, but I think for a lot of teams that are on the frontier right now, it actually is not that hard to build a harness. And I'm thinking about publishing a framework to do this in Notion, where you take what the DoorDash product manager did, and the only difference is you say, take it and publish it also to Notion, so that everything now is shared in Notion as a front layer and GitHub as a back layer. And for non-technical teams, what's great is almost everybody uses Notion. And Notion has a great MCP. And since you have an MCP that everybody can connect to, you basically have the framework for the thing you want. It still requires, you have to know to type Skillify, and you have to know a couple of commands. But I think in my mind, I can get to a point where it's like, go into Cowork, set up these MCPs, and here are the 10 commands you need to create your workflow. I think I can teach most people that. But I mean, to Jacob's point, I kind of think inevitably, whether it's his software or other software, we get to this point pretty soon where the expectation of looking over memories and managing hooks and managing session data and creating skills and publishing them and sanitizing them, all this just happens naturally regardless of whatever tool you're using. We're just right at the frontier of it starting to happen.
What's fascinating to me is there's this general feeling of hey, AI is, AGI is almost here. And we just spent 40 minutes talking about all the ways you have to set up your systems to make actual good use of these tools that were nowhere close to AGI, right? If you were really close to AGI, you wouldn't need any of this harness and infrastructure and blah, 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 right? I'm purposefully being very facetious here. And so you still need a lot of software on top of these systems to make sense of what's actually, going to drive productivity and intelligence. And so I wonder if some of these the Ilya Sutskever and Jan LeCun, the new AI labs are going to try and sort of come at this whole problem from a completely different angle that actually gets us to something that's more closer to AGI. I don't know. I'm just sci-fi talk here, but it still feels very a lot of work.
You're right. I mean, this is something that I've been thinking a lot about, by the way. I think people are thinking about AGI in a way that is maybe very human-like. I think if AGI exists, it's because the things that we're talking about, hooks and skills and memory allocation, the thing that's not going to change is we have this idea of a model, and the model is using real world kind of data to change how the model puts an outcome of text. If you've read the paper from 2017, Attention is All You Need, you understand that this is a very complicated math model. And the math model takes in data and has an output. And all these things we're talking about, I almost kind of feel like we are grafting pieces of the human brain. And so AGI is going to occur when enough of this stuff is happening automatically that the experience we have feels human and real. But underneath the hood, it's these are actually, it's we're building the network layer of how a computer operates. Again, I think so much of how in the late 90s when software was taking over and there are all these things that we now take for granted, with how the internet operates and how software is written. And humans invented these things. And we are inventing concepts that AI is going to use to kind of build itself. And who knows? I mean, I think the exciting thing is that at some point when you get to to this place where like there's long running sessions where there's pre and post compaction and AI can kind of like work through tasks and separate itself out, it will feel very much like, what we expect from AGI. It just we'll kind of know how it's operating. It's not going to be this mysterious, like we don't know how the human brain works. It's like, no, we've kind of invented a version of the human brain by piecing together all these different things that work in unison to create the experience as if something you're talking to is kind of like working autonomously.
Well said. All right. We are at the hour. This was a great session. Austin will do this again with different guests. So if you're listening in, give us a like, give us a follow. And like we mentioned in the last episode, we'll intersperse news, interviews, and deep dives on specific brands and their go-to-market. So tune in again next week for another great episode.
See you guys.